Hey guys, so if you don't know me already, I am Debbie and I upload daily vlogs onto YouTube, mainly including my three children, Stevie, Quinn and Jackson. Basically, I wanted to do a miscarriage story simply because when I was going through at the time, I felt like I couldn't really relate to anything on the internet and find advice as to what was going on at the time. I thought that I would make my video just to make other girls feel that they're not alone and that they, if they can't find the symptoms that I had online, they might relate back to my video. So I found out I was pregnant at the beginning of April. I got to around 6 weeks pregnant when I started bleeding. Basically, what happened was I started having these really bad pains, and because I already have 3 children, I do know what being pregnant involves and the pains and cramps you can get, but these pains were much more different than that. They were much sorer and they basically felt a bit similar to contractions. So what happened was I brushed off the first kind of pains I'd had, thinking that it was possibly just normal. It was my 4th pregnancy and I thought it was just going to be a lot worse. So this happened again 2 days later and I just felt as though something wasn't right. To me, those pains weren't normal. So I called NHS 24 where I explained my symptoms. They asked me loads of questions. I didn't feel that it was really urgent, like it was a major emergency, but I was in a lot of pain. So they then put me to my local casualty where they examined me and I gave them a urine sample, and it came back that there was a small trace of blood in my urine, but they said that this was normal and that they were treating me for a urine infection. So I then got antibiotics, which I had to take 4 times a day. So what happened after that was fine. It came to the Monday and I noticed that I had a little pea-sized spot of blood on my pants. So I thought that's a bit odd. So when I wiped, there wasn't anything there, so I didn't seem that alarmed at the point. But it ended up that later on in the afternoon there was a lot more, and there was when I was wiping. So I called the midwife and I couldn't get through. I called so many times, and I decided that I would call the Aberdeen number that they had given me over the weekend, and when I called they told me to come in. So when I went in, I gave them a urine sample and they also gave me an examination. So it was similar to having a smear test, except they didn't take any sample from inside. So basically what they did was they just had a look to see where the bleeding was coming from, and she said it wasn't coming from my uterus, it was coming from my cervix. So she reassured me that this was normal and this can happen in some women. So that was fine. So I then went home feeling a bit more reassured that everything was going to be okay, and then throughout the week it just got a lot worse. I actually had clots coming out, and I was really upset by this point because I felt like I knew exactly what was happening, but because I didn't have the exact answer that I wanted from the doctor, I was really confused and I kept thinking that everything would be okay. So I literally was searching the internet high and low for information. I was reading blogs, I was looking up YouTube, and obviously when you look up Google, you always read the worst stories, and I was just absolutely horrified and emotional, and I just couldn't imagine like having to go through that. Like, I'd had 3 normal deliveries, 3 normal pregnancies, and I just couldn't imagine why this was happening to me. I just felt really emotional and I didn't know what was happening. At the same time, I think I did know deep down what was happening, but I didn't want to believe that it was. So anyway, as the bleeding got heavier and the clots got worse, I called the Aberdeen number that I had back, and this was the Thursday, and they had booked me in for a scan for the Friday when I was in on the Monday night. But they basically said on the Thursday that I had to wait until Friday for my scan because they couldn't fit me in. So by this point I was even more upset because they couldn't fit me in, and I know they can't see everybody there and then, but I felt like they just left me throughout the whole week just to basically pass it myself, and it was really upsetting. A lot of people think, oh well, you weren't that far on, or you have 3 kids already, so that doesn't matter. It does matter because, you know, I was carrying a baby at that point, and it was upsetting because we really wanted to have another one. So Friday had finally arrived. I was so nervous, I felt so sick, and when we went she did an ultrasound and she couldn't really see anything because I had been quite constipated throughout the week, so there was a lot of shadows. So she then had to do an internal. So when she did the internal, it was as I expected, that I had miscarried, and I think that I'd cried so much throughout the week and I had prepared myself, but I think for her to still tell me from a professional, it was still a bit upsetting. So I was a little upset, but I tried to hold back the tears, I think, because, you know, I didn't really want to break down and be super emotional in front of the midwife. Obviously it's normal and they see it all the time, but I think I prepared myself so much and I knew that it was going to be bad news. So basically what happened after that was they had to take my blood, as my urine sample was still showing up that I was pregnant. They did check my ovaries and things in case of an ectopic pregnancy, but I didn't really have any symptoms of that, but they just had to check anyway, and they seemed to think that everything was fine. So my bloods, they called me back that evening and my bloods were still sitting at 94, and of course the test was still positive, so they said that I had to go back in 48 hours for more bloods, which I did, and they have now came down to 70 from 94. Obviously it's still quite high, but I think it probably takes a couple of weeks for your body to get back to normal. But throughout my miscarriage I didn't really have any other symptoms apart from bleeding and clotting. I did feel quite sick one morning and quite faint, but I never actually was sick or faint. But anyway, it got to my 7th week, and that's when the news was final that I did have a miscarriage. But I feel like miscarriages aren't spoken about enough. I think a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but I felt like I wanted to talk about my story just because it amazed me how much people that I knew had actually miscarried and had never actually spoke about it before. So I thought that I wanted to share my story in case someone was having the same symptoms as me and were told differently, and then it did end up being a miscarriage. But I just think it's a shame that some women think that they're alone throughout a miscarriage, and you're not. There's so much support out there. Especially I need to thank a channel mum group on Facebook. I was always posting anonymous paragraphs of advice on there, and there was always women there to support me and give me advice. But I just want to say thank you for watching my little miscarriage story. I don't really know what else to say, but if you do have any questions, please do ask them and I'd be happy to answer. But just remember that you're not alone and there is support out there for you.